Hello to everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tanner Swift and I'll be your moderator for this session. I'm excited to introduce today's speaker, Boris Doshin, but before I hand the mic over to our presenter, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available on demand after the live session. We will provide you with some of those details at the end. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. During the session, if you are here on WebEx with us and have any questions for Boris, we ask that you please submit those through the Q&A panel. It allows us to filter your questions better and to where we can answer those during our Q&A segment. Also, there will be a few poll questions for you to chime in on throughout today's session. Keep a lookout for those slides and a QR code. You can also use the Slido app here in WebEx, or I will place a link in the chat once those go live. If you experience any audio issues, we ask that you try to rejoin the session, and if to no avail, please use the call-in number displayed on the chat screen. I will post that once again momentarily. So without further ado, I would like to kick things off by welcoming our speaker, Boris. Boris, right over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Tanner, for that introduction. I am very excited to be here today. I am based in Barcelona, which means it's 7 o'clock here, which means I'm very lonely in the office. Everyone has evacuated the office premises by now. So I don't feel that lonely. It would be really good if you guys could find a chat window in your WebEx and just let me know where you're dialing in from today. So I have some idea that people are actually listening and, and are following. So if you find the chat option, please send a little chat just saying where you are dialing in from today. So anyone? No? Everyone is very quiet today. Nairobi from Kenya. That's hi Brian. So good to have you here today as well. There's people from the UK. Ryan, very good. I lived in London for many years until coming here as well. People from Ecuador as well. I'm glad you're joining from UK as well. It's past the work hours as well. Someone from Florida. Great, so good to have you all. Just a quick reminder again, if you have questions, better to use Q&A section or the chat section as well, that's fine. Yeah, I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. So we're covering cloud monitoring for Catalyst Wireless today. What I'm hoping that you will get out of this session is that you will learn about management and monitoring options for Catalyst Wireless. I always get a bit confused with two because you can do management, you can do monitoring. They all start with M, and it's a kind of a bit weird of what's possible where. So we'll cover some of that first. We will talk about benefits of using Meraki Dashboard for monitoring for the supported Catalyst Wireless devices. Learn about the best practices relating to cloud monitoring, and learn a bit about the device onboarding process. And we'll look at a demo as well of how all of that looks like. So the agenda will look something like this. We'll start with those management and monitoring options, move on to the features of cloud monitoring, talk about cloud monitoring best practices, device onboarding process, and then demo. And now we have a first poll, and Tanner will kindly help me here. So if you have your mobile phone, you can scan the QR code. I don't know if we have a normal link as well, so that you can do it on the computer as well. And the question I have for you is, what management and monitoring solution are you currently using for your wireless network? Cisco Prime, Cisco Catalyst Center, Meraki Dashboard, or other? So maybe I'm just gonna give you just a few seconds. Then let me know when the answers are starting to come in.
Sure, got a few flowing in right now. About 8 to 11 votes. Currently leading the way or tied for the lead right now, Meraki Dashboard and other, followed by Cisco Catalyst Center and then Cisco Prime.
Oh, there's still people using Cisco Prime, so that's good to hear as well. As you know, we're kind of going through the process of encouraging people to migrate to some of the other options as well. But you probably have your reasons why you're still doing Cisco Prime. That's fine as well. And it's good to hear that there are people already using Meraki Dashboard here as well for this purpose too. Okay, we have a second poll as well. I'm a bit less interested in knowing the answers right now. But my question is, what do you find most challenging about managing your current wireless network? Troubleshooting issues, performance monitoring, device onboarding, or keeping software up to date? Let me know, and we'll collect these answers and look at them at the end. Okay, so let's get started. So what are some of the management and monitoring options you get with Cisco? So as you know, Meraki has been an acquisition of Cisco quite a few years ago. And it was a wonderful, and it still is a wonderful part of company to work with. I worked with Meraki for quite a few years, and we kind of operated as a company within a company. And we really brought in, as Meraki, this different new way of doing networking, which was cloud first. And people just loved the experience they had of managing their network, the monitoring experience of as well. The learning curve was a bit easier of how you manage these networks, and it just really, people really like it for this ability to do everything from a single pane of glass, and then also have a really easy, simple way of managing their network. Now, that, of course, has been brought into Cisco, who, of course, had its Catalyst offering already alongside Cisco Catalyst Center or DNA Center until recently. And really, for many years now, we have been offering these two options as two solutions. But what that has meant is that you had to make a choice very early on before your purchase of which one you will go for. And both of them really address different sides of the market. So with the Catalyst Center, Catalyst has some amazing solutions when it comes to the flexibility of hardware, flexibility of platform, modular options as well with the switches and those large Catalyst switches when you have when you can add the line cards and whatnot. And really feature-rich set of products. So if you're doing complex stuff around BGP, if you are doing VRFs, if you are having really the need for really high throughputs, Catalyst is the way to go. But what we're now moving to is a world where we're really bringing these two platforms much more closer together. And we're doing that in a few different ways. So we will still, our kind of vision really going forward is that we will have more and more common hardware. So up until now, we had the wireless products, which were Catalyst and Meraki, and we had the same for the switching as well. Going forward, you will see more and more options, both in switching and wireless, where we have common hardware, where you can choose whether you will run it in the on-prem managed mode or on a cloud managed mode. On-prem managed can be with Catalyst Center. Full cloud managed has to be with Meraki Dashboard, right? Because with Catalyst, obviously your on-prem devices running iOS, you can also run by just using CLI, for example, and not the Catalyst Center as well. So that's kind of happening on the management side of things. We have a supported set of switches already, 9300, which are available for purchase now, which you can run in both modes, and as well as TW access points as well, which you can move between Meraki and Catalyst mode as well. Now, there's also this kind of hybrid between cloud management as well. There are many situations in which we do want to have this kind of mix for one reason or the other. You might have iOS run devices at your headquarters because you are needing these advanced features, but you might choose to run Meraki devices in your branches, for example. So for those kind of situations, we are also now offering what we call cloud monitoring. Cloud monitoring allows you to take iOS running devices and onboard them to Meraki Dashboard for monitoring purposes only. And hybrid deployments are a very obvious way to very obvious type of deployments to address with this. But also those fully on-prem managed deployments as well. If you're not using Catalyst Center, then you can use Meraki Dashboard for monitoring. So if you are, for example, managing your devices through CLI only, and you do want to have a platform which allows you to do kind of cloud-based monitoring, you can now do that as well. So the goal with cloud monitoring is to help you simplify the Catalyst network operations so that you have this remote access to these devices and kind of know what's happening in your network. It helps with things like event monitoring, where we're able to manage Catalyst alerts and events and automate some of these alerts and events by using webhooks and dashboard API. So you can connect to third-party solutions as well. Or with WebEx, for example, to get these alerts there as well. Incident response, we want to help you to reduce incident resolution time when outages occur and restore network services as quickly as possible. Problem analysis, how do we give you more tools so that you can identify the underlying causes of network incidents? How do we look at some of the performance monitoring as well? How your device is working? How's the wireless deployment looking? How are those clients performing on your wireless network as well? Now, the two things that I really sought after, which we have on the roadmap, is to look at also change tracking and image management. This is currently not available, but we have intention to introduce these features as well for the change tracking of the configuration, as well as the image management for these devices too. Now, here's some wireless controllers. So obviously with the Catalyst Center, with the Catalyst devices, we have wireless LAN controllers, which need to be onboarded as well alongside the access points. We'll see how all of that works a bit later on. But here's some of the wireless controller alerts and events that are available or will be available. If a device becomes unreachable or a controller has an unexpected reload, this is where we generate alerts. We also generate a set of alerts around controller CPU utilization, controller memory utilization, interface being disconnected, and so on. Redundancy switchover detection, mobility tunnel flap detection, radius server timeout, DHCP server timeout as well. Now, here are some guiding principles that we should understand when we talk about the cloud monitoring and the dashboard experience for the Catalyst devices. First, we need to understand what cloud monitoring is not, maybe, and then we'll move on what it is. Now, with the Meraki Dashboard, we're not intending to replace the Catalyst Center. Meraki, obviously, iOS devices run different feature sets to Meraki devices or Meraki mode devices. So this replacement is, this is not a replacement for the Catalyst Center, right? If you are using Catalyst Center for the management and for monitoring for these devices, you should continue to do so. Cisco Catalyst Center and cloud monitoring coexistence is not supported and no plans for support. So if you are using the Catalyst Center, you can't use cloud monitoring at the same time. So we don't support this. So if you are using Catalyst, so you kind of have to choose one or the other. So where this really makes sense is if you do have devices which are iOS, for which you already paid your Catalyst Center license, and you're not using Catalyst Center for whatever reason, you can choose to use Meraki Dashboard instead for monitoring purposes. And of course, there is not going to be full iOS XE feature parity in dashboard. This more relates to the management of the devices, right? So if you are choosing to manage the devices with Meraki Dashboard, which you can do as well, you just have to be careful that when you do that switch, you're actually not bringing iOS XE features alongside. You're running these devices in Meraki mode with Meraki feature set. So let's summarize this up. So with the Catalyst devices, two options: run it in iOS XE mode or run it with Meraki feature set. If you're running it with Meraki feature set, it all behaves as a Meraki device managed fully by Meraki Dashboard. However, if you're running it in iOS XE, now you have a choice. You're either going to deploy Cisco Catalyst Center for full monitoring and management, or just Meraki Dashboard for monitoring. Okay, so hopefully that clears it up. So what is it? We want to enable the Meraki cloud experience to Catalyst devices so that more of you can enjoy that Meraki experience. You get anywhere access to Catalyst device status, client traffic statistics, topology, and so on. Single pane of glass monitoring for Meraki and Catalyst customers if you are using both in a combination. Catalyst customers that want the cloud solution but are not ready for a refresh. So if you do need, so if you are thinking about trying out Meraki Dashboard and you're still kind of thinking about it, this is a really good way to try Meraki Dashboard as well. And then we want to have an easy and low barrier entry to cloud, give value to Catalyst customers with existing DNA Center license, retain some of the Meraki experience as well. When it comes to the supported hardware, here is what we have supported currently. The supported controllers are C9800 models, so 80, 40, LC, and LF. And then the access points which are supported are from Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 6, and Wave 2 as well. What I wanted to say about this as well is that you can obviously have access points attached to your WLCs which are not supported, and that is okay. If you onboard the WLC with unsupported access points, that is fine. It's just that these access points will not be visible in Meraki Dashboard. When it comes to ISXC software that is supported, it has to be 17.12.3. It works from 17.12.3, but it is recommended that you run at least 17.15.1 or later. And then the controller scale, 2,000 access points, 20,000 clients. There's quite a few questions that are here, and I'm looking at them with the corner of my eye. And there's the last one from Rajan that is really interesting. On this supported hardware, why do we need a controller since the access points can be directly managed by Meraki, APs like CW9, P100? It's a really good question. It's kind of what we were discussing. It's a really good point here as well. So if you're running Cisco Wireless 91XX access points, those are the access points which can be run in Meraki mode. If you run them in a Meraki mode, they directly talk to Meraki Cloud. They're fully managed by Meraki Cloud, and you don't need the controller for this purpose, okay? But if you run them in ISXC mode, then of course they still need the WLC. And if you want to do monitoring, well, they still need the WLC to run, and you're then monitoring both the virtual LAN controller and the access points as well. Now, when it comes to the licensing, if I manage to change my slide, the licensing that is needed for cloud monitoring stays with the Cisco DNA licenses which are needed. So if you're running these devices in the ISXC mode, DNA licenses are required for those. If you're running them in Meraki mode, you then need the Meraki licenses. But here for monitoring, we're running them in ISXC. So that means that you are either running Cisco DNA Advantage license or the Cisco DNA Essential license. So with the Essential, you get the full monitoring suite for Catalyst switches, wireless LAN controllers, and access points. And with the Cisco DNA Advantage, full monitoring, it's the same feature suite, but it also adds client traffic analytics, which is based on NBAR and NetFlow. So a deployment summary here, we have some of the requirements for the controller and some of the dashboard requirements as well. So the controller requirements is that we recommend that you run at least 17.15.1 or later. There's a max of 2,000 access points and 20,000 clients. And then when it comes to dashboard requirements, these are some requirements that are kind of generic. The first few, you can have up to 25,000 total nodes in a single dashboard organization, max 1,000 nodes in a dashboard network, and max 50,000 clients. This is not necessarily really related to monitoring. These are general requirements. And then it's also important to note that we cannot, if you do have some Meraki managed access points, You cannot mix them with the monitored access points in the same dashboard network. We'll talk about this a bit more later. Okay, so we first need to cover, so when we move over to the onboarding process and how all of that looks like, we do first need to cover what are some dashboard network types. Now, I don't know how many of you know the Meraki structure, but Meraki is structured into organizations, and those organizations are then divided further into networks. Organization is the owning entity. That's where usually you have one organization per entity, per business. You could have more, but usually it's one per business. And that's the owning entity to which your devices licenses are assigned. And that's further divided into networks. A network is effectively a configuration container. So once you assign a network, once you assign a device to or claim device to an organization, you then assign it to a network. And with that process, you actually assign a configuration to it. There are two types of networks here that you can have. You can have a combined and a non-combined network. So a non-combined network is an option to, well, effectively have a network where you just have one device type. So that can be a wireless LAN controller network or switching network, or you can have a combined network type where you can have multiple types of devices. Now, it is recommended that you always initiate networks as a combined networks for monitoring purposes, but for all purposes in general. The non-combined networks are a bit of a legacy network type, which we still do have in Dashboard. It is still there because there are some features around management, around configuration cloning that are only available for this type of network. But for the monitoring purposes, you don't have to worry about that. And those features are not very often used anyway, because people more often rely on APIs for these purposes. So general rules of thumb is used combined network instead. So how do we place devices in a dashboard network? Best practice that we recommend is that devices in the same physical LAN topology should be in the same Meraki network. Usually, all devices in the same building might be in the same LAN topology, so we would place them in a single network. Devices in different physical topologies should be in different dashboard networks. So, for example, devices in different buildings. And this just reduces the management complexity a bit. You could get away with having everything in one network, but that's just a bit too messy. Now, there are a few different ways in which we can do some mapping of the devices. You can choose effectively to just dump all of your access points and all your WLCs into a single network, or you can choose to have them in multiple different networks. And we have an automated onboarding process where this is done by a site tag. We'll see how the process looks like, but a part of a preparation, if you do want to place access points in different networks, is to create different site tags using the WLC GUI, for example. And those site tags will be translated into different networks, which will be automatically created. So in this example here, we have the access points which are tagged with, well, the same site tag in this case. And so during the onboarding process, if we choose to do it this way, the onboarding process will automatically create networks with the defined site tags and place these access points there. We'll see that in a second. So access point assignments. Access point are automatically assigned to a network based on option chosen when adding the controller to a dashboard network. So what we do is we first add the controller to the network, and then we have two options really here. One is to add everything to a single network, as I said, so you dump everything, the WLC controller, your devices, everything in a single network. It can be an existing network that you have previously created, or it can be a brand new network that you define during the process. We'll see how this looks like in a second. Or you can do the different networks by site tags. This is what I was just talking about. So if you choose this option, you'll get an automatic network creation for every site tag that you have previously created. So two options, so all-in-one design or site-based design. All-in-one design really recommended for kind of more simple deployments where you maybe just have a single building where you have all of your access points in a single site. If you do have multiple sites and maybe you have a deployment where the WC is in a separate data center, then you're really looking at this site-based design, which would serve better your topology. So obviously, if it's an just a single network, what would happen here is that you would have this one network campus, and it would be adding both the WLC and the access points to the same network. Or in this other option, what would happen where we choose the different networks is that there would be a single network created for the WLC or for the pair of WLCs we'll see in a second, and then automatically created networks for site 1, site 2, and site 3 if we have tagged them in the GUI of the WLC by these names. We currently support the high availability SSO deployment. And in this type of a deployment, the access point will be seen as the virtual LAN controller will be seen as a single device on the network. And in case of a failure, then which device you see, would change. You are able to see in dashboard if you do have high availability configured, and we'll see how that is done. Now, during the onboarding, there are a few different stages that you go through. The good news is that you don't have to go through individually onboarding every single access point. We are just onboarding the virtual LAN controller effectively, and then the virtual LAN controller will do the rest of the work for us. The way that you do this is that there are two options to do this. You can either do it in GUI or you do it using CLI. And if you do that, you can do the service Meraki connect command, and that will initiate this process of registering with the dashboard. Now, during that process, the dashboard will create a Meraki ID. And you can see here that ID very much looks like a normal Meraki serial number. The Catalyst serial number stays on this device, right? So the serial number is generated in the factory, that doesn't change. But we then also create this, what we call Meraki ID, which is effectively a Meraki serial number as well, kind of virtually, and assign it to this device for the purpose of Meraki being able to configure, to talk to dashboard. The next thing that will happen from this is that the WLC will fetch next tunnel config and create the next tunnel between the WLC and the dashboard. And then there will be some exchange of information happening further. Now, what happens in the next step is that the WLC will do the great work of onboarding the rest of the wireless devices for us. So this is not something that we need to do at all. This happens automatically. So the dashboard registration for every access point will be initiated through CapWrap to the access points. And then each access point will directly talk to Meraki Dashboard to obtain its own serial number or its own Meraki ID as well. Now, what I do need to say is that you do need to allow during the onboarding, you do need to allow the connectivity between the devices and the dashboard. So that needs to be allowed in TCP 443. Now, for the WLC, this communication needs to stay allowed all the time. This is how WLC keeps talking to the Meraki cloud. For the access point, the only point where the access points are directly talking to the cloud is during this registration process. So only at this time where the registration is initiated to the WLC, there's this direct communication to obtain the Meraki IDs. Following that, there's no direct communication anymore. If you don't want to have your access point having access to TCP 443, you can shut it down at that point. All of the communication then happens through CapWrap. WLC is still responsible for managing being the management plane for and control plane for these devices. And then the only communication that Dashboard does is with the wireless LAN controller, not with the individual access points. So there's a question on the WLCs that I see here. So yes, WLCs are always only on the monitoring mode. We don't have an option. We will never have an option to manage WLCs, right? Because if you are managing wireless devices with Meraki, WLC is not needed. Okay. Once we have gone through this process of registering the devices, obtaining Meraki ID, we then need to claim this device, the WLC, and that is the only device that we're claiming. Again, we're not claiming individual access points by the serial numbers. So we just need that Meraki ID for the WLC, and then that will take us through this onboarding for the rest of it. There's another option to, there's another option to enable the Meraki services on WLC, and you can do it through a GUI as well. And we will actually have a look at that now. Now, this is a part of the demo that I have pre-recorded. So in the WLC, what you need to do is to go to sorry, give me a second, is you need to go to the cloud services option here. People can get a bit confused here because if you have the right version, all of the versions that support monitoring also support cloud management. If you have access points which you want to migrate to Meraki, they're not preloaded with Meraki, you also do this through, by using a WLC. And you'll see here that there is an option here that says migrate to Meraki management. This is different from what we're doing today. This is if you want to move iOS XE device to a Meraki managed mode, but that's all we want to do here. We just want to keep iOS XE and we want to then move it to the cloud services. So under cloud services, there's a Meraki option which you need to enable, and then really importantly, you need to click on this apply button here, and that will actually initiate this process, same as when you do it through the CLI. And if you refresh it, then in this table here, you will be able to see the Meraki ID for the WLC as well. If you are using the CLI, then you can do show, I think, Meraki Connect. And with that as well, you will get the status of the onboarding as well, including the Meraki ID. In the next step, you want to go to your Meraki dashboard, and within your inventory, you want to claim the device. You do that by selecting the Meraki ID that you have generated, copying it over to the claim side of things. And once you do that, this will then actually add this device here, and then you want to go on and create a network for this device. Okay. So one way to do that is if you go to organization and create a network. This gives you an option to name the network for the WLC. So for example, Cloud Managed Controller. And then here we have an option to select the device you want to add. You add the WLC, and this is where you get that option to choose whether you want to have a single network where you dump all of the access points together within the network of the WLC. It does give you an option to create a new network from here as well, which we don't want to do. And then there's an option to also do different networks by site tags, right? And then that, if you here, you're effectively choosing what you want to do with your access points, same network or different networks as well. You do need to provide the username and password, and iOS XE enable password as well, because the dashboard will be using these to push some of the configuration down. And that's kind of everything that you need to do for the onboarding there. Once your devices are onboarded, we'll move over to an example of an organization where I do have this. You should be able to then see them under your inventory. For those of you who haven't seen Meraki Dashboard before, It's organized so that here on the top left, once this loads, you can move between the different networks that you have in your deployment. Network wide settings relate to all of your network, and then organization settings relate to all of the organization. And in between, you have this sandwich of the devices you have deployed in your Meraki deployment. Now, you should be able to go to organization inventory. And here I can search for, well, product types. And one of the product types that I can search for is the wireless controller. Wireless will be the access points which are managed by Meraki. And then read-only wireless node will be access points which are just monitored and managed through a wireless LAN controller, right? So if I click on wireless LAN controller, that will kind of show me that I have two of these added, and they are both in my data center as a wireless controller network. So I can go to this network from here. Right. So here I am in this network, and you will notice that if I hover above wireless, I see a very different view to what I see normally if I have managed devices. Please do remember that now that I am monitoring some devices with this network, I can't add managed devices to it. So this is now only a network for monitoring wireless. I can have switches, I can have managed monitored switches, that is fine. I can have cameras, that's all fine. But the access points, they need to be either just monitor or just managed. The first thing that I want to look at is this list of wireless LAN controllers. And here you will see something interesting. You will see that there's only one LAN controller which shows up here. If you remember a second ago when we were looking at my inventory, I actually had two listed here. So what is actually happening? These are wireless LAN controllers which are in high availability configuration, but I have visibility here of only the active one currently. So if I click on that, it will take me to a page which is very similar across Meraki devices. That kind of shows status and some information about my device. And within here, I will have this tab which shows me a redundancy option. And here I do have this view of my second WLC as well, with a different cloud ID. If they were for some reason to switch, and if my primary was to fail, then that would reflect on the dashboard as well. And I would be seeing my secondary as a primary, right? Now notice here, whenever you have a device which is monitor only, that is clearly stated here with this Mark II. We should be able to see, well, how the ports look like, whether they're connected, disconnected, what the access points we have, which are onboarded to this WLC, and if we have any clients, we don't currently have those. We will have historic data as well for up to a month, which will show the connectivity of this device, number of clients as well, and the CPU utilization for these devices, as well as the memory utilization as well. Notice here on the left, I can see which firmware I am running, device uptime, and the serial numbers, including the Meraki ID and the Catalyst serial number as well. And here it's also giving me information on the type of redundancy that I do have. Under ports, I can get some more information about the ports that I have, what the status of them is, and what the traffic sent and traffic received is for up to a month as well. And then I can also see which layer 3 interfaces have been configured in this device. So I see here that I have VLAN 1 configured. We looked at the redundancy, and we can have a look at the APs as well. So this is the list of the access points which are attached to this WLC. Yeah, so here we can see the connectivity, cloud ID as well. Notice whenever you have a table in Meraki, you can click on this cog symbol, and you can also add some of the other options that we have here, so that you can see those as well. Now, if I go to any of these devices, now notice that actually this device is in the same network. So here for this demo, we have chosen to have everything in a single network and not use that separation between the different devices. It's quite small, it's just 3 access points. So there was no really much need. Notice here, so I have the informational ports again. I can see that there's that this device is using PoE as its power source. I saw that there was earlier a question of whether we can add floor maps and visualize them. Yet to some extent, yes. So you can add a floor map and add this device there as well. Information about the site tags as well, the AP mode, what SSIDs are being run from this access point as well, and some information on radio settings as well. Now, if you're looking here, there's an option here for the location. This is where you can upload your map and place it on the map there as well. I think we see the other access points there too. I should have already done this, no? Yeah, so you can see the different access points that we can place there. If you wanted to upload a photo of this access point you have, we haven't done that. And there's also a topology options here too, where you can see how this access point is connected through a network and to which switch as well. Under the connections, this is a tab that will look familiar to many of you. This is also part of the Meraki Help suite of features. It gives this really useful graph, which kind of tries to help with troubleshooting. Gives you this view of if a problem does occur for a client, at which stage that problem has occurred. So whether that may have been a problem with association, with authentication, with DHCP, with DNS, or finally, some other issue past that. But we can see here that all of the issues that we do have for this network happen in the authentication. It looks like we have some problematic clients here, which are listed here as well, which often seem to fail at this authentication step. And then we also have some information around the performance, which I should change probably to the last month. It might take a bit of time to load. But you can see things around usage, the number of clients, average signal quality, wireless latency, channel utilization, data rates. Takes a bit to load because it's for longer time periods. Now, with all of this, you'll then also get the access to some of the client monitoring too. One way to have a look at this is if you go to the network-wide clients option. We also do, if you are using the Advantage license, you are able to also monitor the usage that clients have and what types of applications they're using. Now, what I wanted to show you here is that if I go to the client type, I can search for the wireless clients. I have one client here, which I think is currently disconnected, but it will give us a good idea of how this page looks like. So I will be able to see where about my client is on the map. This is not very precise here in this demo because we have all these access points actually in a lab environment and not in the proper office, so we don't get the accurate reading. But with the 3 access points, you would normally. You do get this current client connection, so you can see that there's some kind of an issue with the connectivity between client and the access point, and then you can see that access point and the switch seem to be operating well, as well as their connection too. And then here you will be able to see some information on the IP address log usage as well. If you do go to the connections, you get the similar page as before, but this is now not for all of your deployment or for the access point. This is now for this particular client. And under the performance, we get a similar set of metrics around what applications are being used, the signal quality, channel utilization, data rates as well. Cool. And that brings me to the end of this demo. Let's see, I have a few other, go back to my slides. We have the final poll question as well. So if you would kindly answer it for me as well. And I'm kind of curious to know if you are planning to integrate cloud monitoring for your existing wireless cloud infrastructure. Yes, within the next 6 months. Yes, but not within the next 6 months. No, or undecided. And we'll see those in a second. Now, I'm going to look through some of the questions and see if we can answer them. There's quite a few. There's a question around Nexus 9K switches onboarded to Meraki Cloud. Currently, there's no, to my knowledge, this is not something that we're currently looking at. We're effectively focusing on the Catalyst range for now. Since the Catalyst 9K is to be managed by Meraki Dashboard, and also there is integration with ICE. In this case, TACX Plus for Cat 9K not required. It's a good question. I guess it depends on what you're trying to achieve. There is an integration. Well, I don't know what you mean by the integration, but here you can still run a separate ICE server if you wanted to, and that is supported. Or you can use some of the integrated features within Meraki. There's a question around the feature matrix of DNAC versus dashboard. That's always a highly requested option, and I'm afraid that we don't have a good slide for that. You do. What I would say is that you do. If you are considering the migration, I do really recommend that you discuss that with your account manager or the SC that you're working with, and just make sure that there's feature parity, or come up. If you are migrating to management, come up with a good migration plan where you really consider the features that you're using. There's a question about the licensing. I don't entirely understand this question about licensing around the brownfield deployment. So, but what I would say here is that it's important to remember that effectively the license you need is the management mode in which you're operating the devices. So if you're operating a device in iOS XE, you need a DNA license. If you're operating them in the Meraki mode, you need a Meraki license. Okay, and that's what you need to know. If you're choosing to use monitoring, that really doesn't impact this because you are still managing the device as an iOS XE device, so you need a DNA license there. Cat 9K WLCs are only in monitoring mode. Oh, we addressed this question already. Can we use Cisco iOS image on a high computing, high speed interface server as a wireless controller? This is a good question about the wireless controller. Yes, so there's a virtual wireless controller which is available from Cisco. However, the virtual wireless controller is currently not supported for cloud monitoring. It is on a roadmap and we expect it to come, but currently for monitoring, we only support those hardware access points. And then we have a few of these that we already addressed. Let's see. Can we change the name of the wireless LAN controller in the Meraki dashboard even though it is in a read-only mode? This is a good question, and I don't actually know. I don't think you can, right? Because you define that when you're first defining your WLC. Let me see. I'm interested in this as well, because you defined your wireless LAN controller name when you're first initiating WLC, usually by that widget. So I would expect that is not something that you can do, and if you could do it, then it would just affect what you see here. But maybe I'm completely wrong, and no, I don't see an option here. So if it was an option, there would be like a pencil, and you would be able to change it, but it doesn't look like there is. But good question. Let's see. I'm just trying to get through many of these as I can. Obviously, the image must be licensed by Cisco, and is the Cisco wireless LAN controller compatible with vendors of other wireless access points with open source protocol. No, the Cisco virtual LAN controllers are always used only for Cisco access points. So no, we don't do this kind of open approach here. And it's the same with Meraki Dashboard. If you're using them in Meraki Manage mode, you cannot onboard third-party access points, unfortunately. Cool. I think, and then there's a question that particularly talks about Ruckus and Huawei, but I think I've just answered that as well with this previous question. Cool. Then do we have results of those two polls? I forgot what my first question was.
all good.
It was quite a while ago. Let me see.
All good. We can double back through here these poll questions. Just as a reminder, all three poll questions are now available for you to provide your answers on. If you wish to, the link is in the chat screen. You can use the Slido panel or scan that QR code on your screen. Poll question 2, which is on your screen right now. What do you find most challenging about managing your current wireless network? Running away with it at 67% is troubleshooting issues, followed by performance monitoring at 31% and keeping software up to date at 3%.
I think that's interesting. You know what? We should have had an option F, which is I have no problems at all. And I'm sure that would probably, maybe everyone is so brilliant that there's no problems whatsoever. But it's interesting that the troubleshooting came up. I mean, I'm not surprised. It's difficult troubleshooting wireless in particular because, well, it's just kind of very changing network environment, kind of figuring out. Usually, people have a wireless issue, then they don't. It's always quite a challenge. If you look at some of the, especially on Meraki Manage and on the monitoring, we do try to address some of this with that Meraki Health feature set. So have a look through Meraki Health documentation, see if there's anything interesting there as well. And then the final poll question, poll 3.
Yeah, still waiting for some more results to get in here, but do have a couple votes on yes, but not within the next 6 months. 1 yes within the next 6 months, and no, not currently planning. A couple votes as well.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I would be really. Unfortunately, we don't have a back and forth communication in these webinars, which is a shame. I would be really interested to know what well, obviously the barrier that you do have, and this is not for you, to be really clear, is that if you're using Catalyst Center for management, you should continue to use it. Like, this is huge. Unless you are thinking for some reason to discontinue the use of Catalyst Center, this is not appropriate for you. But if you are already paying for the license, and if you are not managing devices through Catalyst Center, it's a kind of very low stake option in a way to onboard these devices, and maybe onboard some of them, and on switching or monitoring, and see and just try it out, see if that adds value. It shouldn't be too much of a disruption to your day-to-day network operation. So no, it's an idea. Okay, so I have a couple of key points that I would like you to remember as you walk away. So the cloud monitoring is now supported on Catalyst wireless devices as well. We had it on switches, now on wireless too. Make sure that you review Meraki documentation. So that's on documentation on meraki.com. There's a really good FAQ article that you should read. And make sure that you plan your onboarding carefully, just to make sure that there's no any disruptions. Is there anything else, Tanner, that we need to cover?
Yeah, one more question just came through here from Rajan. When a Cat 9K with the DNA Advantage license, which has 1,000 eyes feature, when this has been migrated to Meraki Dashboard, does it still hold the 1,000 eyes feature? Because at the dashboard only MX, which supports TE.
So if you are migrating Cat 9K to Meraki Managed, it will operate as a Meraki device. And you're right, currently Meraki switches do not have 1,000 eyes integration there. So the only integration that we do have with Meraki. Currently, is you're correct, with the Meraki MX, where we run an agent with a thousand-eyes agent for active probing. But yes, not from Meraki switches. Good question.
And that is it on my end, just from the questions and such. I know you wanted to go over a couple of these key points to remember, but is there anything else that you do want to cover here before we wrap up, as we're close to the hour?
No, I think that was everything for me. I hope this was useful and informative for you guys. I hope it was fun as well. I certainly enjoyed talking about this with you, and there was a lot of really good questions, so I really appreciate that. And hope to see you on some other Meraki webinars soon.
Really appreciate it, Boris. Thank you so much. A couple tidbits for those of you who are able to attend today. If you do have a question for Boris, we'll keep that Q&A window open for a couple more moments. For even more tutorials, demonstrations, and future webinars, please visit the Cisco Learning Network. You can follow up with any further questions for Boris or about this presentation on the Cisco Learning Network. In the chat, I've placed a link to our post-discussion thread. That will include some details on where you can access today's recording once it becomes available, and also follow up if you have any questions, want to talk about today's session. We can provide some answers or have some convos with the community around that. Your feedback is important to us, and at this time you'll be directed to a post-webinar survey. Please take the time to participate in that. It helps us plan out some future sessions for you all. Once again, we thank everybody for joining us today. We will see you next time on the Cisco Learning Network.
Bye.